Our guest today, Professor Banji Oyeyinka, scholar, researcher, professor in economics, innovation, and technology management in developing countries, former senior special advisor on industrialization to the president of the African Development Bank. He joins us virtually. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Right.
Pleasure to
So,
be with you.
to be or not to be is, what we're saying. The central bank governor says, suggested that the era of devaluation of the naira should be behind us. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, it's just a suggestion, but do you think that's going to be a fact going forward?
So, thanks a lot. I think the government has done well to stabilize the macro sector. But I looked at the statement of the governor as an aspiration. I think it's an aspiration. It's not a statement grounded in economic theory. If you say we will no more devalue, it also, I believe, sending a signal to our partners, to investors, that there will be no whimsical devaluation. The government has removed arbitrage from the system, collapsed the exchange rate system. So I think, if you take that statement as it is, that there will be no more devaluation. It's aspirational, in my view, because exchange rate determination, is not governed by statements. It's governed by fundamentals of economics, like the purchasing power parity, balance of payment,
Right.
The differential between your trading partner and yourself in terms of inflation, trade imbalances, and capital flows, and all of that we all know about. So, and I think that's why the governor and the central bank actually they focus a lot on inflation, trying to keep it in a single digit. But we need to understand his statement in that context, I believe. And how we do it matters quite a lot. Keeping inflation down, making sure that we reduce volatility. The reason why the issue of stabilization comes into play all the time is because of the nature of the structure of our economy, the almost extreme reliance on the volatile oil sector. Just look at what is happening now in Iran, Israel, and these wars in the Middle East. Nobody knows where it's going to end. So you cannot say it. You have to do something else. You cannot decree it. You don't decree policy into play without doing the strategy.
Right. I'm not sure it was decreed, but I'm sure you just said that as a rhetorical statement. As you said, it was a suggestion or it was an idea that aspiration, what he would like to happen, because I don't think anybody wants to keep devaluing their currency. But from a development economist perspective, what real sector changes do you think must occur for us to for our currency to be stable and such that whatever the central bank governor was imagining or what he wanted to happen will actually happen on the long run?
Thank you very much. I think the source of sustainable development is it's well known. And I'll make 3 points. One is that the source of foreign exchange for us now always comes from oil. It creates volatility. It creates uncertainty in the economy. It's not in our hands. Whenever oil prices encounter what is encountering now, it's taken out of our hands because it's internationally determined, whether it's $100, whether it's $50, whether it's $20. I mean, look at COVID. For example, during COVID, a barrel of oil was almost worthless. It was like a cup of coffee, the same cost. So I would say that going forward, And building on this stability that we have achieved so far, relative stability, we should call it, because nothing is permanent in life. The first thing is that the real economy, what you call the real sectors, should be the sources of our effects, not just oil. So when you see a problem, you diagnose a problem, you try to go beyond it. A strong Naira must come from a production economy. We should invest in production skills, infrastructure that boost productivity and competitiveness. We stabilize the Naira from the foreign exchange earnings that derive from what we produce outside of oil, what we produce, what we process, what we export. In other words, we should aggressively pursue export expansion. And there are three areas, and I've been an advocate of agro-processing. That will be, for me, number one, because that's where Africa has comparative advantage. 65% of all arable land in the world, uncultivated, is in Africa. So why don't you take advantage of it? So we have cocoa, sesame, ginger, cassava. Raw exports means no value addition, and it keeps Nigeria in poverty. That's number one thing we need to keep in mind. So we should aggressively solve that problem. We should support commodity exporters who want to produce here. I've spoken with so many of them, and they tell me, Prof, you really don't know what we face from logistics, from ports, from corruption, and all of this. There was a person who told me, look, I wanted to have my own export terminal where I will produce and export. He said, I fought that for almost 2 years, nothing happened. So we need to encourage those folks who want to process their cocoa, their sesame in situ in Nigeria. The second area, I believe, and I believe that, I have talked a lot about special agro-industrial processing zone over the years, but there's a part of the special agro zone called the agri transformation centers that we need to really take forward. I would suggest, for example, that every governor in this country must strive to have minimum of one special agro zone, at least 10 agri transformation centers that will attack the area where poverty is persistent. In every local government, we should have at least 10 of them, agri transformation centers. For me, the rural transformation agenda that we are talking to some people about now is the most powerful lever for transformation, not oil. 50 years, 60 years, we've tried oil.
Just a moment, Prof. My sincere apologies for butting in. Yeah. And it's like you looked in my notes and you saw my next question. Because I've always had a challenge. You have said that the pronouncement of the CBN governor is aspirational, which is of course amazing, and that it is not grounded in any economic theory. But I always ask this question when I hear lofty economic policies or ideals and ideas and all of that, particularly the macroeconomic ones. I'm asking the question, where is the connect between the macroeconomic issues and the microeconomic issues, where the federal government is dealing with all the big numbers and all? How about those ones that trickle down to the people, that affect the livelihoods, the pockets of people, fuel price, and all those things? So you're speaking to one or two of them, but I just want us to, before you go deeper into them, I just want us to be clear that the connect can be seen by the average Nigerian. When we are saying this macroeconomic policy, we have a microeconomic policy that is supposed to make it relevant to the people. Help us get that connect so that people can appreciate whatever it is that the CBN governor has
thank you very much, Ayo. I think macro stability is extremely important. I give an example. If you have uncertainty and volatility in the economy, no investor will come because they are not sure what happens tomorrow. As a matter of fact, a low value Naira is probably better than a volatile Naira. We don't want any of them, right? But when people are uncertain, if I invest today at a certain level of exchange rate, and I'm not sure what happens next month. I've taken a bank loan. I don't know. I can't plan. That is a major issue. So this is why macro stability that the CBN has done is extremely important. Number two is that when your Naira is too weak, for example, the cost of imported inputs become extremely expensive. And we saw it during the first structural adjustment program in the mid-80s. So you want to stabilize that. Even if it's not what you want at its optimal, you still want to stabilize. So there's a big connection between the macro variables. Inflation, for example, is also one of those things that CBNs all over the world have narrowly focused on because it affects consumer spending, it affects lives. You see now the debate in the US about cost of fuel, and of course, it's also in Nigeria. When a household, you have a certain income per month, you made your budget, and suddenly half of it is going into just buying petrol. That's a big problem. Or food. Remember when we had very high food prices, rice is costing so much, people are in trouble. So, and that also affects the supply side. When there's no demand, producers cannot supply. They don't have any incentive to produce more. So I think that connection is extremely important. The other time I broke it into macro, meso, and micro. Macro is those things that we've been talking about, PPP, and all of that. Meso is the level of the sector, the sectoral incentives that you give to the oil and gas sector, to the agri sector, to the industrial sector, manufacturing sector. They are all parameters that we should pay very close attention to. And at a micro level is where you now begin to talk about the details of, is it a micro, a small, medium, large enterprise? What do they need to survive? A lot of people, when they see a private sector making an argument for support, some people, I believe, and I'm sorry to say, ignorantly oppose it. And a private sector company is producing for the country. And what you see in Asia as one of their big successes is that at the beginning of their development planning, they ensure that no foreign multinationals control any sector of their economy. Just take a look at it. You go to Japan, it's Mitsubishi, it's Mitsui, it's Toyota, it's Nippon. You can't see any of them. They allow foreign direct investment. You go to Korea, the same. It's Samsung, it's Kia, it's Hyundai. And I must say to you, for example, Samsung alone controls about 24% of the total Korean GDP. You can check it out. One company. So when people were, say, opposing Dangote, I was really amused about what people say, but that's an aside. I'm saying a country like ours with a huge consumer base must build its own national farms, whether they are small, medium, or large. They must support them by every means possible so that in times of volatility, when companies are relocating and this, they stay here. They are Nigerian companies. So, and across all the sectors, whether it's agriculture. So, your initial question was, what's the connection? I think I've actually answered that. But answering it, how do we do it? We do it by supporting the micro level. And I said, for example, the sectoral characteristics is agribusiness to make sure that we produce, we process, and we aggressively do export expansion of processed goods, not raw materials.
Okay, now, Prof.
And you do that by detailed intervention.
Yeah, my apologies for butting in.
Yes, please.
The macroeconomic issues are dealt with by the federal government. And is it the same thing with microeconomic issues? Is there something state governments can do so that the macroeconomic pluses or wins that the federal government is achieving for the country, Nigerians can appreciate it. Because a good number of people are wondering what the holy is happening if Naira is stable and all of those things, but things are still expensive as far as they are concerned, as far as their experiences are concerned. So is there a role for the state governments to help Nigerians deal better with whatever the pressures are that are coming from wherever?
Excellent question, Ayo. I think, I have always made the argument that the locus of production is at the state level, at the local government level. Is the land, is the factory. The locus, the place where you produce, is those states. And I started by saying, for example, that state governments must ensure that all their local governments are turned into ecosystems of production. And one of the instruments is what we call the agri-transformation centers under the ATCs. We are saying this because a large part of Nigeria is agricultural. There are other things. For example, for those states, say in the South, with a huge amount of gas, Nigeria is not just a crude oil. In fact, we have more gas assets than crude oil. I believe that they must intentionally encourage private sector companies to invest in converting our gas assets into high-value products, ethanol, methanol, fertilizer, ammonia, all of those things. And Dangote has shown us this is possible. Dangote is not just producing fuel, it's producing petrochemicals, all kinds of things. Say what you will. The point is that we have a pointer now to the fact that we can actually encourage every state government in the South with huge gas resources to begin to do this, not by themselves, because I don't believe government should do business. A ministry cannot do business. It is not work. The second layer is the agribusiness side, and I made some calculations. Since I left the bank, I've had time to really sit down, begin reflecting on a lot of things. Nigeria is said to have, in fact, there was a report yesterday that the poverty rate came down from 62 to 61. I think that's it's fine, but it's not where we want to be. Poverty rate, meaning that people living under $2 a day, 135 million people in the country. And I did a simulation. For example, if this 135 million people suddenly goes from $2 to $10 per day, the calculation shows that if we do this well, in over 2 years, we'll add about $400 billion to the Nigerian GDP, which is actually double of what we have now. In fact, the projections show that over 10 years, Nigeria will actually transit to almost more than $1 trillion economy. For the Southwest alone, we'll move from like $40 billion to over $100 billion if we do this just across the Southwest. In other words, you're asking about state government, that is the locus of production. And we see factories all over places like Ogun and others.
So how about regional collaborations, Prof?
Yes,
you are talking about
important.
the Southwest now, and we know that there is now a ministry, a federal ministry, dealing with this development commissions, regional development commissions, and all of those things. How do you see that also panning out? Because sometimes politics can get in the way of state governments.
I believe, and I want to assume that maybe this is why the government set up the regional commission. We used to have, I think, just the Northeast and the NNDC. Now, every state, every region has its own regional commission, and it's called Development Commission. My proposal is that they should focus on development, and I believe that's really what their mandate is. And they should take this forward, because local governments are largely seen as political. The Southwest, the Northeast, the Northwest commissions should take a bold step to advance these kinds of ideas that we are proposing. Make sure every local government in that region has productive posts, turn them from poverty posts to productive posts, reach the underserved communities with the facilities that we know are not there now. Thank God for, mini grids, solar. I've seen companies that are building mini grids in very remote areas. So the key issue that causes manufacturing barriers is electricity, transport and logistics, and access to finance. If you want to remove poverty from this land, we have to go to where do 70% of our people live. And this was the principles that we enacted for the special agro-industrial processing zone. We didn't build them around the ports. We didn't build them near airports. We said, if you really want to solve the poverty problem, you must go where poverty is persistent. We must go to the rural, peri-urban areas and build productive. And I believe it's possible. So I believe like you say, the regional commissions, development commissions, to make it their goal to reach all of these places, all of these places. The technology is reaching everywhere now. And I believe that whatever the states are doing, they should collaborate with the development commissions, work together. Apart from the appropriation to these commissions, the state government should work hand in hand with them to actually change the ecosystem. We can change it in 10 years.
Right.
Nigeria can become a 1.3 trillion economy in 10 years if we do this.
Yes, right. And
we need an average of 7% growth over 10 years to double your
apologies. And that is happening in somewhat like, you have this braced commission in the South region that, the state government established that, in 2011, trying to work together to develop, the state's economies. We also have one with the southwestern states as well. I know that they were working on transport infrastructure, train, especially with the train linking different states in the southwest. I also know that the Lagos state and government and some governments in the north, I think. I can't remember, maybe it's Nasarawa or Zamfara state. The states that produce rice, in the north and in the southeast as well. They're also working. Yeah, I think Kebbi State. Yes, the lake rice. I think that is going on somewhat, and the governments are trying to do that. So how can we encourage more of this, such that we look inwards and we try and get Nigeria back to that state before the discovery of crude oil, when agriculture was the mainstay of the economy and everything was fine?
No, I think I will encourage you as channels. Maybe you want to go around and verify these things. I think it will be a good exercise for us, for the country, to actually show where we are. Oftentimes, declaration on paper means nothing, by the way. I don't know the exact level of achievement. I know that the Southwest was just established a year ago. In fact, they're going to be 9 months ago. They'll be 1 year in July, like Southeast and Northwest. The existing ones were NNDC and Northeast, I believe, at that time. And so only four of them were recently established. I doubt if they've been able to get to implementation. Much of what you know now or hear now, there's still the level of declaration of intention. So I think channels will do this country a big favor, actually, because you are credible. You have the reach to actually go and ask questions. These are your KPIs. How far have you gone? particularly the older ones. The Northeast one have been around for a while. NNDC has been around for a while. So, and I think it's also in our for us to hold all of them to account as they evolve, over time. So, I believe the establishment of those commissions is a fantastic idea.
Well, Prof,
I am not sure where they have reached.
Even though you said that the Southwest Development Commission has only just been commissioned and
in
is
July
less
last
than
year,
1 year old, they've always had this development agenda for Western Nigeria. It's similar in a way, in my opinion. So, how do they differ?
Yeah. So Don, as I remember, and I've been to the office a couple of times too, is a source of ideas. They are not an implementing. I don't know how empowered they are financially to implement, but I believe that an institution like Don should work closely with the Southwest Development Commission. They should work with other actors within this Southwest, just like the others also. So Don was not, if I recall correctly, an implementing agency. With the establishment of the Southwest Development Commission, now you give instruments to implement. They will be empowered financially. They will have to set up organizations to do the real development on the ground. Because really what we want to see is on the ground, not on paper, not by policy declaration. We want to see things on the ground. And I think this is really what will change the narrative for our country. And one of the last things also that I wanted to say, apart from the gas issue in the north south, is that with the issue of steel, I believe should not die as an idea in our country. I overheard Dangote recently saying he wants to now go into steel. I think we should encourage that. Without a steel sector, we will be stuck in this structural dependence of imports. This is my view. If Nigeria had a steel, we will have been far more ahead. Everywhere you look at the airports, look at the seaports, look at your ships, look at your motors, look at your vehicles, look at everything. Everything is made of steel. Look at the environment where you are, bridges, culverts. There is nothing you look at that doesn't involve steel, that doesn't involve some level of petrochemicals. So I think we should not let the idea that it should not be government, because I don't think they will ever allow you to work in government. We've tried so hard, but let us encourage private participation aggressively to build a primary steel plant. I'm not talking of, scrap using steel plant. They are very useful. They do their part, but steel plant that produce primary steel, raw steel plants. And today, if I'm correct, a 1 million ton direct reduction electric arc furnace plant will cost you just about $1 billion. $1 billion. A 2 million tons will cost you about maybe $2.2 billion. Dangote built 20 billion plants. So I think this is an idea that I believe the government should aggressively pursue. Get folks, consortia, to put money in building. I don't care where it is, as long as it's here in Nigeria, based on good feasibility study.
Let me expect, Prof, that you're going to get a call from any of the state governors anytime soon, because the things you're saying, I mean, they are quite lofty. We have 774 local governments all over the country. So if one of them, each one of them has just one of these transformation hubs that you talk about, I'm just trying to imagine what my own village, for instance, will begin to look like now. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Yeah, Professor Banji Oyeyinka is a scholar, a researcher, professor in economics, innovation and technology management in developing countries. He's also been, at some time, senior special advisor on industrialization to the president of the AFDB. We appreciate your time and your thoughts this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.